In the afternoon, the Hellwig family drank their coffee in the garden. Friederike had thrown on her cotton, flannel-lined Sunday cloak, set her padded black silk cap upon her head, and gone first to church and then to pay a visit to a certain aunt. Heinrich and little Felicitas were left alone in the great church-silent house. Earlier that morning, he had secretly visited the churchyard and brought back the ill-fated shawl, now washed and folded away in the chest. The honest fellow had heard and partly witnessed the forenoon scene from the kitchen. It had cost him no small effort not to burst in and shake the houseboy with the same roughness the frail child had endured. Now he sat in the servants' room, whittling at his broken walking stick. Though he whistled badly and without tune, his eyes kept straying toward the child. That was no longer the familiar little Felicitas. She sat like a caged bird burning with an inner tumult, fed by implacable resentment against the hands that bound her. On her knees lay Robinson, borrowed at some risk by Heinrich from Nathaniel's bookshelf, yet she did not look at him. On that island of Robinson, there were no cruel people who scorned a mother. Sunshine fell on palm crowns and green waves of meadow grass. Here the daylight filtered in as a gray twilight through narrow, barred windows, and nowhere, neither in the house nor in the street, was there a single green leaf to cheer the eye. Suddenly the child sprang up. From the attic one could look far afield. The air was lighter there. Like a passing shadow, she slipped through the threshold and up the winding stone main stair. The old merchant's house bore many marks of its decline. Once a noble seat, it still showed its former pride. A turreted oriel, mighty chimneys, the carved arms of its founder. The front had been modernized here and there. The rear wings, however, retained a somber primness, long, echoing corridors, slanting walls, worn stone floors, narrow back stairs that squeaked at the lightest tread, forlorn little windows that let thin shafts of pale light fall across crumbling brick. Dust lay there that was ancient. At the landing, Felicitas saw a half-open door she had always known shut. How preoccupied the housekeeper must have been. Bolts and locks forgotten. Behind the door stretched a long corridor. One side room stood open, a lumber attic with a high dormer. It was filled with old things. Against a rococo armchair leaned the portrait of the merchant's widow, set not against a wall, but left face out to the dust. The painted lady's prominent, faintly coquettish eyes alarmed the child. Holding her breath, she opened a trunk standing nearby. On top lay a light blue woolen dress, trimmed with delicate embroidery. Yes, Friederike had once taken that very gown off her and hidden it away, replacing it with the coarse dark one she wore now. Small hands dug deeper. More treasures came to light. Elegant little things her dead mother had handled appeared. A purse embroidered with a patched little kitten and an agate seal set in silver, engraved with the rampant heart that adorned even the house walls. Beneath it the letters MVH. Surely her mother's. Memories rose in a flood, and with them a new, clearer understanding. The nights of wakefulness, the father in his glittering doublet, the mother with loosened hair bending tenderly over her, and then, each time, the shot fired. The pale, beloved face she had gazed at, she had not understood. Piece by piece, the rediscovered treasures were touched, kissed, and returned to the trunk. When the lid closed, the child embraced the much-traveled box and laid her cheek upon it. Old companions, the only beings who belonged to her in a world where those of her parents' calling found so little welcome. Her defiant little face softened. With her cheek pressed against the musty lining, she lay still, eyes closed. Through the dormer, a warm breeze drifted, bringing a faint stream of balsamic scent. What notes were those, coming from far off? Not the organ of the friary. These were of a higher schooling, an overture to Don Juan, played beautifully upon a piano. Felicitas set a rickety table beneath the window and climbed up. What a sight! Not the usual tiled roofs, but a tapestry of flowers on the opposite wing, asters and dahlias glowing, vine leaves in 100 shades of red, wild vine creeping up the roof ridge. Along an airy gallery, boxes of earth held thick sprays of mignonette and hundreds of monthly roses. A small glassed room, half hidden by ivy, stood open, and from within the music streamed. A white garden chair, a round table, a porcelain coffee service. Here evidently someone lived. In her heart, the child named it the Flower Fairy's hut. A glance downward showed the fowl yard. Friederike kept that key ever in her pocket. The useless grass, as the little kitchen woman used to say, was nothing less than the host tended by the solitary old Mamsell, who had once incurred the wrath of the mistress for playing unholy, merry airs on a Sunday. The child ventured onto the gutter planks. They creaked beneath her, and the drop was 4 stories deep. But she scrambled on and soon stood among the flowers, her cheeks aflame. On the round table lay papers. Die Gartenlaube, how fittingly named. Peering through the glass, she saw the room within, walls entirely overgrown with creeping plants, pedestals bearing plaster busts, a piano beneath the windows. The old Mamsell sat there as yesterday, spectacles upon her nose, her wan cheeks faintly flushed. She ceased mid-chord and looked up. Her eyes, over the rim of the glasses, met the child's. "How came you here, my child?" she asked, surprised, but with a gentle kindness. "Over the roofs," answered Felicitas, pointing across the yard. The old lady gasped and then smiled. She opened the glass door and drew the child in. "You are the little fee, are you not?" she said. At this name, Heinrich's tender name for her, the old grief stirred. The child's cheeks burned. The stiff lines of defiance melted. The Mamsell saw it. She took the small face between both hands and bent it toward her. "You know, my little one," she said softly, "for many years Heinrich has come up here on Sundays to fetch whatever small things I needed. And he has never disobeyed my command not to speak of what goes on below. He loves you dearly. That is why he disobeyed me today." At Heinrich's name, the child's hardness broke. "He loves me. No one else does," she whispered and burst into tears. "Not no one," returned the old lady, looking at her with deep tenderness. "Do you not know there is one who will love you always, even if all men turn away? The dear God. Oh, he loves me not, for I am a showfolk child," cried Felicitas fiercely. "Mrs. Hellwig said this morning my soul is lost. They say my mother was cast off. I do not love him now, not if my mother is not there. Good God, what have they made of your faith?" The old Mamsell rose quickly and opened a door to a small adjoining room. It was spotless, hung with white muslin. The very air seemed like an angel's veil. On the bedside table lay a well-used Bible. She opened it and read the passage on love. "Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and though prophecies shall fail, yet love never faileth." Closing the book, she drew the child close. "Love comes from him, and your mother is his child, as we all are. She has gone to him, for love never faileth. If you seek her there, you need never fear. And when you look up to the stars at night, say, 'Beside such a heaven there can be no hell.' Does she not have your love again, my child?" Felicitas did not answer with words. She threw her arms passionately around the gentle woman, and a hot flood of tears broke loose. 2 days later, a carriage stood before the Hellwig door. The widow set forth with her 2 sons to escort them to the next town. Johannes was going to Bonn to study medicine. Nathaniel would be placed in the same school. Heinrich stood in the doorway, broad-shouldered and contented. A plaintive whistle hovered about his lips, the sign with him of inward well-being. His thumbs were thrust deep into his huge fists, a posture which, as the townsfolk said, meant, "Lord keep us, that the mischief not return."